Have you ever thought about making your own golf clubs but didn't know where to start? Well, it's okay. I got you covered. First, you gotta make a jig. Just a few pieces of scrap wood. That's really all you need. First and foremost, I need to find a 60-degree angle to attach my first piece. I'm using my 18 gauge brad nailer to tack it down first, then following up with a couple of screws for extra hold. Cutting off the overhang is optional, but it does give a cleaner, more finished look. The third piece doesn't need to be very tall, just enough to support the golf club shaft and hold it relatively straight. If building this measurement jig for right-handed clubs, the two pieces I attached would need to be on the opposite side. Using a yardstick or tape measure, mark out a range from 35 inches to 45 inches with 1/8 inch increments. Next, you need to find your overall height, and then you gotta find your wrist to floor measurement. And please, wear your golf shoes. And then you take those numbers and you put them in a golf club calculator. I used Golfonaut. And then it'll spit out all your club lengths that you need. So write them down and let's start assembling clubs. So I've got a 6-iron head right here. Got these cool little, I can't remember what they're called, but this little piece of trim. I'm building these clubs for my wife, and she found these really cool looking ferrules that I'm using. Unfortunately, they were a pretty tight fit, and I'm not sure if that was the ferrules' fault or the stepless iron shafts I'm using. But either way, this was the first time I've had to deal with it. It's crucial to position the ferrule correctly so that the shaft fits all the way to the bottom of the hosel in the iron head. Now I've got this golf ferrule on the end of it, which was quite a bit trickier than any ferrule I've ever tried to put on a golf club. So these ones are just a little tight fit. I was using my little torch to slightly heat up this material, which made it easier to get on it. For the rest of the clubs, I think I'm going to use just a blow dryer, and that should be enough heat to heat this up slightly. I can put the head on, put it in the jig. I can look at my little guide here. 6-iron is 37.5 inches. So that's right here. And because of the end being, I'm gonna say it's 5/16 thick. So I need to subtract 5/16. Okay, I've got my mark. I bought this little pipe cutter. This is the first time I've used it for a project like this, but I think it's gonna work really well. If you don't wanna buy one of these, which this was super inexpensive, it was like $8, but you can also get away with just using a hacksaw. Works just fine. Takes a little longer, it's kind of annoying, but definitely works. But the pipe clamp is pretty easy. I just put my blade right on my mark, and then I rotate it around it a couple times, tighten it down a little bit more. Until it breaks through. Oh, there we go. Super easy. Now I can add a piece of tape. The rubber vise clamp I'm using is key for this project. Without it, I could easily damage the shaft while clamping. They're inexpensive and often come as a freebie with a regripping kit. It's important to go slowly when taping, as it's easy to get unwanted creases in the tape if you're not careful. Now I can use some grip solvent, and I see a lot of people kind of pouring it on it, but I think it also works pretty good and is less messy. To just first apply it to a rag or a paper towel. Make sure to have a finger plugging up the bottom of the grip and the top of the grip, and extra careful to not splash any solvent around, which could potentially get in your eye. Get that solvent coating the inside of this handle. I let the excess solvent drip into an empty bucket where it can evaporate on its own. If you're using a large container to collect the solvent, simply angle the shaft the other way and let the solvent run down the tape. And this is just mineral spirits. It's the same thing that's in here. This one just came with a grip kit. Let's check the measurement now. I'm actually just a little short, so on the other ones I'm actually going to go just 1/4 of an inch less. Now to prepare the head with the shaft, I just need to scuff it up a little bit. This is pretty aggressive sandpaper. This is 60 grit. You could probably get away with 120 grit, would be just fine. We're just trying to really scuff it up to get a good mechanical bond. I'm going to pop the end, make sure that piece of tape doesn't completely seal over. Otherwise you get, when you glue this up, you get back pressure because it's all sealed. So you got to make sure that hole is there. And then I've got this wire brush. Now it's ready for the last step. Got a piece of scrap wood here, plywood, and just need to mix my epoxy and then stick them together. Need a popsicle stick to mix. It really doesn't take much. That was probably way too much, actually. This is a 5-minute epoxy, so it's gonna set pretty quick. And it's nothing special, it's just JB Weld 5-minute epoxy. I got it at the local Home Depot. Although I really should be wearing gloves right now. That should be enough. I'm gonna put a little bit on the inside of the hosel. I usually epoxy this little trim piece, but it was just so tight that I'm not taking it off and putting it back on. Expect that some epoxy is going to drip out, so keep a few paper towels handy to clean up any excess. If the grip isn't perfectly aligned, don't worry. You can always adjust it later once the epoxy has fully dried. Now I can just really carefully let this sit right here and let that fully dry. It's a 5-minute epoxy, but I'm gonna actually wait closer to 20 minutes just to really make sure I get it to set really nicely before I do the last bit. And now I just have a little bit of cleanup I need to do along this edge. So first I'm gonna, usually you could sand right onto the hosel, but this is painted black, so I'm gonna try to do my best to keep from scratching off that paint. And this painter tape does provide quite a bit of protection, but I still need to be careful to not sand completely through it. And then I've got some 500 grit sandpaper. Pretty smooth on that side. It's really just this outside piece right here. I also want to be careful I don't get any scratches on the paint of the shaft. When it comes to sourcing materials for this project, there are plenty of companies that sell parts and kits for assembling your own golf clubs. I've mainly been ordering from Monarch Golf. They have everything you need at a pretty reasonable price. The total cost to assemble this 6-iron was around $30. It's looking really good. And then I know people usually finish up with a little bit of acetone, but I'm kind of worried about dissolving the black paint, so I'm not gonna use acetone to smooth out that. But 500 grit is pretty minimal scratching, so it's really not too scratched up from the sandpaper. So I'm gonna call that good. I'm gonna use a little bit more mineral spirits though. Mineral spirits shouldn't melt the plastic, but you should still kind of buff it up a little bit. And that's it. Golf club done. And it's really just that simple.